Good evening, friends, or good day wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the fourth and last of the series reintroducing the medieval city of Ani, which is co-hosted by the Armenian Institute in London and our friends at the Association for the Protection of Cultural Heritage, or Kemikade, in Turkey. Just a few housekeeping things at the beginning. The session this evening is being recorded for the Armenian Institute's website and YouTube, and is also being live streamed on Facebook. So if you wouldn't like to appear during the talks and during the questions, the speakers will be spotlighted, of course. But if you wouldn't like to appear when you're asking a question, please do make use of the stop video function. If you have questions as we're going, then you can ask them in the chat, and I can ask them to our speaker at the end, or you can save them up to ask yourself, or of course you can ask in the chat at the end. I should say that this evening's talk, just like the entire series, is dedicated to Osman Kavala, one of the co-founders of Kemikade, and who has been in prison for 1,365 days now on spurious politically motivated charges for his humanitarian work and for his commitment to bridging the peoples of Anatolia, Mesopotamia and Caucasia, and fostering dialogue and reconciliation. So Osman Bey knows about this series and is really encouraging of it. He's sent word since it's begun that he's so happy that it's taking place. So we send him our love and solidarity, and yes, dedicate this evening to him. Now, it's very fitting that we end this series thinking about the preservation of the site of the city of Ani, and where we go next in terms of how to promote the preservation and research into the site. This series is intended to launch a transnational network of scholars, interested persons and organizations who want to participate in this work. And that network will be co-hosted between the Armenian Institute and Kemikade. So it's really great to have the chair of the board of Kemikade with us tonight to speak about this topic, Ismail Yavuz Ozkaya. Yavuz has studied architecture and restoration at the Middle East Technical University in Ankara, worked as an architect, on project coordinator, various architectural design companies. He's also attended the graduate program in art and art history at SUNY in Binghamton in the US, and has long worked in historic preservation projects, not least since 2006 at Ani itself, documenting and preparing historic preservation projects for its different monuments. And so he's worked for a long time with Osman Bey and has been a leading figure in supporting Ani and making sure that its monuments are treated well. And that's what he's going to be speaking to us about to us tonight. So Yavuz, please, we're really honored to have you with us, and take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick, and the Armenian Institute for this great initiative, starting a long-term planning and opening up space for future collaboration centered around Ani by the scholars, experts, organizations, and individuals from different geographies, different countries. And thank you everyone who are following this series of talks and contributing to the current research presented by dear Nick, Christina, and Hegner, and for being here today while I'll be presenting historic preservation efforts in Ani for the past 15 years now. It's a pleasure for me to share a summary of these projects and my personal journey in Ani. I will briefly introduce the site and the first preservation projects from 2006 to 2008, managed by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. Then I will focus on two current projects at Ani, which are being realized through a collaboration between the Ministry of Culture and Tourism and the World Monuments Fund since 2011. In the last part of my presentation, I will take you to a not well-known side of our work on Ani, namely the emerging research, collaborations, alongside the friendships that flourished between experts, parallel to preservation efforts in Ani, and mainly initiated and supported by Osman Kavala. Now, the site. Situated above the river of Ahurian that separates Turkey and Armenia, the spectacular ruins of the abandoned city of Ani is a renowned site in history and a UNESCO site since 2016. Surrounded by nearly 100-meter deep gorges on three sides, which form the natural defense lines of Ani, except at the north, where a very strong double-wall defense system with a dry moat is partially visible today. Once a lively metropolis with 1,001 churches and over 100,000 inhabitants, and emerged at the crossroad of caravan trade in the Middle Ages. It became a famous city all across medieval Armenia with its political, religious, cultural life, trade and artisanship, a well-planned and crowded city adorned with prestigious monuments, and encircled by a network of defense structures, villages, and monastic communities. Although best known as the capital of Armenian Bagratid or Bagratuni Kingdom, it also hosted a number of other dynasties of the 11th to 13th centuries, all of which left traces of their history in the architectural record of the site. As widely accepted, King Ashot established Ani as the capital of the Armenian Kingdom in 961, built a citadel and a palace at the south, and a defense wall at the narrowest spot of the topography. This small area soon developed into a city and housed the royal treasure. And thanks to the famous trade route known as Silk Road, the city rapidly expanded. Just within 3 decades, Ashot's successor, King Sinbad, extended Ani towards north in 989, marked by his famous double-wall defense system. Following the most brilliant years, Bagratuni Kingdom started to experience a decline with Gagik's death in 1020, and Byzantine Empire took control of Ani in 1045. In 1064, this time, Seljuk Turks, led by Alparslan, captured the city and granted it to a Kurdish line of emirs known as Sheddadids. Sheddadids ruled Ani for about 135 years until 1199, when a Georgian alliance of princes known as Zakharids eventually took and ruled Ani until 1236, when the city experienced its gradual decline with the Mongolian invasion, followed by the devastating earthquake of 1319, which also destroyed the dome of the cathedral, and mass migrations starting in the mid-14th century. For the discovery of Ani, we had to wait for the 19th century, and especially the first scientific research, survey, and excavations by Nikolai Marr and a team from the St. Petersburg Imperial Academy of Sciences, which included architects, archaeologists, historians, photographers, painters, linguists, and so on, from 1892 to 1917, when Kars was in Russian hands. Colossal research and information from this period still resonate in every occasion when we to study and understand Ani and its monuments. This is my first visit to Ani. Happened during the summer of 2005, while I was preparing historic preservation projects of a group of traditional houses in the Ottoman district of Kars. Although that was a very short trip, less than 2 hours, I was especially impressed by the construction technology of the flat ceilings made from pieces of thick polychromatic valleys, defense walls, architecture, river, bridge, and so. I'm sure you know them quite well. 1 year later, in the summer of 2006, I was back to Ani, this time to document and prepare historic preservation projects of 2 important monuments, the Church of St. Gregory of Tigrahonens and the Mosque of Miniature, which were chosen by the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism as the first 2 monuments to be carefully surveyed and documented for assessing their physical conditions and eventually having a conservation project for their stabilization. 2006 is also a critical turn for the history of Ani. Remained as a military zone for nearly 50 years, with limited access, excavation, and research, the Turkish ministry took control of all the activities at the site by assigning a group of experts responsible of Ani projects and an advisory board made up of professors in the field of conservation from the Middle East Technical University in Ankara. Advisory Board of Ani prepared a comprehensive report describing the problems of both the site and the monuments, classified short, middle, and long-term studies, asked to stop archaeological excavations, but to prepare a base map of the site, including an inventory of the known structures, and to take temporary emergency measures for visible structural problems, besides geophysical survey, construction material analysis, and a conservation master plan. The projects I am presenting today are being discussed with the board, including the findings, proposals, and all details of interventions before implementations. In 2008, I continued with other two significant monuments, Church of the Redeemer, or Surpirkit Church, and the Church of St. Gregory, or Abu Hamrans. The tender included the investigation and analysis of the problems, mostly structural, of the Baron's Palace, or Sarai, resulting of extreme walling up during the 1999 reconstruction. These are among the handful of monuments at Ani that still have most of their original features intact, including their walls, ceilings, floor, and roof tiles, all of which nonetheless are exposed to elements. Although they are still standing, yet in a compromised state due to the centuries of neglect, a comprehensive survey, research, and stabilization program could help to prevent any further partial or full collapse of this fragile archaeology. I would love to go into every single detail of these projects, but due to the time frame, I will limit myself highlighting the major challenges we and these monuments faced, present major proposals to solve the main problems, and I will reserve time to focus on the conservation projects of the Cathedral of Ani and the Surpirkit Church. The first challenge. When we started the Ani projects, also started to search the emerging technologies, now widely used, but quite new that time, namely high-definition digital survey or laser scanning survey. As in reality, we had only 3 months for each monument for a careful survey, documenting, prepare measured drawings, do historical research, analysis of the construction materials, geological survey, structural analysis, and come up with proposals for works. Although we did not receive proper or satisfactory answers to our questioning these new tools and softwares, we decided to learn by experience. And it turned out the right decision. We both saved the survey time, and it gave us the chance to utilize the scan data composed of millions of points with high accuracy to produce 3D models and architectural drawings. Second challenge we faced when we tried to understand various construction phases existed in these monuments, such as the underground chambers at Manichir or inaccessible upper-level vaulted side chambers at Tigrahonet. We could see various construction layers, but it wasn't easy to see the whole picture, so we needed more. We kind of started from the very beginning, from the scratch. Myself and my colleague and dear friend, art and architecture historian and archaeologist, and the Byzantinist, Dr. Veronica Kalas. I'm happy seeing her among the audience here today, and we still collaborate in other projects. Did all the historical survey, search in the libraries, ordered books, exchanged ideas with the specialists in medieval Armenian architecture, such as Christina Maranchi. That was the first time I heard of Christina's. Later, we met personally in 2011 during a workshop on Ani organized by Koç University and Anadolu Kültür of Deir Osman Kavala. To understand, for instance, why and when the Bema floors were raised in Tigran Hunans, or why the Mosque of Miniature did not have the proper orientation, or when the interior walls of Tigran Hunans were plastered and painted. And we presented our findings in 2 separate occasions in 2008. And the third challenge was, according to the regulations and traditions in Turkey, a phased approach in historic preservation based on the needs of the monuments did not exist at that time. A major problem, especially in archaeological sites with so many layers like in Ani. We could overcome this tradition with the help of the advisory board of Ani and developed a conservation program to be realized in consecutive phases. The proposed program for Ani monuments comes in 3 major planned phases. First phase can be labeled as the urgent or necessary minimum interventions to stop the ongoing disintegration or decay, such as the stabilization or weakened sections of the walls and walls, stitching major detachments, lime mortar injections, besides making the roofs functional and introducing protective shelters. And as a principle, all these interventions will be reversible, easily detectable, not bringing additional loss or lead to new problems, and keeping in mind interventions such as the shelter roofs will become the new image of these monuments. Most care is given to design as well. First phase works is provisioned to be started as soon as the site is secure and the inventory study of the architectural fragments, both inside and outside of the monuments, are complete. Second phase is defined as the research and monitoring, supported by scientific excavations to understand more of the context, while allowing the building slowly dry and monitored. A comprehensive paint analysis program at Tigran Hunans, for instance, was proposed at this phase. And third phase, or final interventions, is provisioned to reevaluate the first phase interventions and the second stage findings, thus, and it will incorporate the presentation of the monuments supported by the site management plan in the long run. So sorry for this long introduction, which I find is quite essential to explain the general approach valid in all preservation projects you will see today. First phase works are now complete for Tigran Hunans, Manuchair, and the Abu Hamrans. I am going to outline them and will continue with the cathedral and Surpirkic. The complex of a chapel with a barrel-vaulted crypt, a church, and a jamadum survived from the large monastic complex dedicated to Saint Gregory the Illuminator, founded by wealthy merchant Tigran Hunans in 1215. When the city was under the control of Zakarians. Church is in the well-known basilical type with a domed hall. Barrel-vaulted cross arms on the interior are elevated with pitched roofs on the exterior, and all the roofs are capped by stone tiles. And delicate stone decoration on the church, on the facades, and fully painted interior with scenes from the life of Christ, together with an unusual cycle of the life of Saint Gregory, the Illuminator, and a scene of El Nino on the west section of the church is exceptional. The northwest corner of the church attached to the southeast corner of a small pre-existing chapel with a barrel-vaulted crypt underneath is difficult to date. A jamadun, or rectangular vaulted antechamber, which is classified as the gallery type, was added later to interconnect the two structures, thereby creating a complex of chapel, church, and jamadun. The chapel and the jamadun were the most structurally unstable parts of the complex, as are the frescoes that were originally protected inside the jamadun and the chapel were now entirely exposed to elements. Proposals, as we could see, to document original details of the pitched roofs, we proposed to complete them in the original details. unlike the conical cap of the dome, where we introduced a shelter roof and no reconstructions. Besides, designed a partial roof, a canopy, for the west end of the church to protect the exposed wall panes, which was modeled to imply the design of the original ceiling of the Jamadun. And another one over the chapel again with the same concern. These shelter roofs are designed with steel beams, finished with natural tuff stone tiles. A visual selection of the roofs are the first to be seen while approaching from the main plateau. The rectangular building, known as the Mosque of Miniature, stands on the original 10th century city walls of Ashot and is just located inside the main gate into the old city before the city's expansion under Simbad. The building is believed to have been the first mosque built in Anatolia and constructed by the first Sheddadid Emir, Manucher. Divided into square bays, symmetrically laid out but irregularly shaped on the account of pre-existing structures, the main level is created by extending one bay off the Ashot walls towards Arpachai, thus creating underground vaulted chambers. Their function remains unknown. Last year, new retaining walls and a door on the southeast facade connected to these underground chambers were exposed. They might have been a part of underground system. Previous excavations also demonstrated there were other buildings, one attached to the southeast wall of the mosque, a now missing ablution fountain and toilets on the northeast wall, besides main drainage of the city. In 1904, a museum was formed in the Mosque of Miniature, where all the objects found during the excavations were started to be collected, catalogued, and exhibited. In order to adapt the building to a museum, the arched openings were filled with walls and new windows were placed. Because of its location, orientation, and the manner of construction, it appears not to have functioned originally as a mosque. A very complex structure with lots of construction layers and unknowns, yet a very spacious and elaborate building with its thick red columns and decorated ceilings has the best view in town. The major intervention proposed for the first phase is a custom-designed light frame shelter, almost flat for minimum visibility, elevated over the exposed roofs, finished in stainless steel sheeting, of course, after cleaning, documenting, and consolidating the roof, monitoring and stabilizing the main crack, which runs through the ceiling and threatens the main facade overlooking the river to detach. And another shelter at the top of the minaret, which was designed both to protect its exposed roof and allow visitors a safe spot to view the city. It's our hope these shelters will help to prevent further damage to the building, as well as preserve the beautiful polychrome tiles and mukarnas that decorate the ceiling. And the white coloring, an effect of Marr's repairs done with cement over the roof when he converted the building into a museum, will eventually be cleaned in the following phases. Church of the Redeemer and Surpirkic and Church of St. Gregory or Abu Hamrans, both are from the 11th century Pahlavani rule of Ani, came with the same tender in 2008. Although different in scale and facade treatments, they resemble in planning being designed as a rotunda. Pirkic as an octofoil and Abu Hamrans a sexfoil in plan. Both had a single entrance facing somehow the south, and both had a porch in the front. Yet, they ended up in different states of conservation. In 1957, Pirkic was left without the essential help to keep it survive. Abu Hamrans, on the other hand, could stand at least for another century without much interventions. As expected, these two come with different stabilization programs to be realized again in three main stages. Besides stabilizing the weakened sections of the load-bearing walls and rehabilitation of the stone tiles of the conical dome, in Abu Hamrans we proposed not to reconstruct the conical top, but introduced a shelter in conical form made of artificial stone, which looked like tooth, which we have also proposed another one with the same materials to the lower level roof, as we couldn't document any original roof tiles at this level as well. For the Turkish, on the other hand, we had to face a challenging problem: how to keep the existing half with minimum intervention, how to keep it survive in a safe and elegant way. Initial design introduces all natural tooth stone buttresses to counterbalance the existing half, besides other stabilization measures like stitching, injections, shelters over the exposed roofs, and an inventory program of the fallen fragments at the eastern section of the church to be evaluated within the larger context of the project. You will see the details of these studies in the course of presentation just after the cathedral, which is next. Ani was at the peak of its development under the rule of Armenian Bagratuni Kingdom when King Simbad ordered the construction of the Cathedral of Ani in 989 to Tirdad, the great architect of the time. Dedicated to Surp Asvadzadzin, the cathedral was completed by Queen Katremit, wife of King Gagik, in 1001. The chosen territory for the construction of the largest church in Ani was located on the high slope between the citadel and the north walls, visible from all directions, one of the predominant buildings of the city landscape. Cathedral is a three-aisled basilica in plan with a central dome supported by four massive freestanding columns which carried the collapsed dome. Main apse is flanked by two-story high vaulted chapels. Monolithic and symmetrical mass of pure geometric forms on the outside turn into a rather dynamic space created with vaults, arches, squinches, and a dome in the interior. There are three semicircular arched entrance doors on the west, north, and the south. And according to Jean-Michel Thierry, traditionally the one on the west reserved for the people, north for the patriarch, and the south for the king. Each entrance door had a small porch in the front attached to the cathedral walls. Possibility of a jamadun on the west is most discussed by Toros Toramanya. Stone decoration over the window frames and on the squinches over the V-shaped niches and the capitals of engaged colonnades of the facades are masterpieces, together with the massive clustered columns which raise up to support the ceilings and the dome, still lure the visitors as they did in the past. The cathedral, which was temporarily used as a mosque after the conquest of Ani by Alparslan in 1064, restored during the rule of Zakarians in the 13th century. In 1319, during the disastrous earthquake, its nearly 20 meters high dome collapsed. Stood exposed to elements and various earthquakes for more than 6 centuries, the northwest corner of the cathedral was seriously damaged at the 1988 earthquake. The southwest section of the cathedral is currently under the threat of a total collapse. Ani archaeological site was listed on the World Monuments Watch in 1996, and some preliminary studies have been conducted for the stabilization of the west wall of the cathedral. The Turkish Ministry of Culture signed a memorandum of understanding with the World Monuments Fund in 2010 for the preservation of the Cathedral of Ani and Superkit Church. In 2012, the cathedral was scientifically surveyed and documented, and a historic preservation project was proposed. Here is the realization of the project. Survey tools that I showed in the beginning and the softwares became more advanced since 2006. This survey lasted only 1.5 days at the site, compared to 8 days for 2 monuments in 2006, and more precise. The next day, we could receive the deformation maps over the facades, a new gift of the advanced laser technology. Here are a few survey drawings to be further utilized in the next phases of the project. Many representations of the cathedral came with a conical roof without a concrete knowledge of its details. Although it is true it had one, no historical visual evidence existed. All we knew, it collapsed in 1319, the remains of it documented during the campaign by Marr in 1908. Although we surveyed and documented the window openings and the colonnades at the base of the drum wall, we had no evidence for the height, details of the conical roof over the dome, architectural features of window openings, stone decoration, and so on. All we had, survey data, typological studies, comparative analysis, and some previous reconstruction drawings developed by architects Oramanyan and Charles Texier, which helped us in our analysis within the scope of our research. Among these studies, luckily, I came across a bit of information by Jean-Michel Thierry, who mentioned a stone sculpture depicting the cathedral was found around 1980s, and it is kept in the Kars Museum. After checking this information with the museum, finally, we could reach it and compare the proportions of the model with our survey drawings. Now, at least, a more solid or tangible evidence we could utilize in our reconstruction analysis. Again, the conservation program comes in 3 planned phases. The first phase, after the installation of a fence for the security and safety of the visitors, yet allowing them inside via the main gate of the cathedral in a controlled way, erection of a temporary load-bearing scaffolding along the west and partially the south wall to hold the detached walls, and a protective load-bearing wooden scaffolding inside the cathedral as a precaution for collapses. Excavation and cataloging of the fragments, launching structural health monitoring program, and the clearing, cataloging, and completion of temporary emergency measures on the roofs have been planned for the first phase. Second phase is all about stabilization program. After the evaluation of the data obtained in the first phase, the emergency structural stabilization works, such as the reconstruction of the northwest section of the church, stitching of the detachments, lime mortar injections, repairs, and completion of missing facings of the walls, roof, and floor tiles have been planned at this phase. Hopefully, second phase will be launched this year. And phase 3 is about the most discussed proposal, the design of a protective shelter over the dome opening, an outcome of the missing roof. Although there is a need of a protective shelter as the monument suffers being exposed to harsh winters and effects of snow, rain, and wind, its form and details were equally important, for once it will be constructed, that will be the new image of the cathedral. Our initial proposal of the protective shelter is designed in the original conical form, not a reconstruction in the real sense. It is made of artificial stone cladding, which look like natural tuff stone on the outside and carried by a steel structure visible only from interior. This design will be further elaborated with the help of new findings, further analysis, and data evaluation within the site management plan of Ani in the future. Considering the new loads and possible negative effects of constructing this new shelter, although it's calculated 1/20th of the original weight of the dome, we will further develop its details after the stabilization program. Here is a group photo of the technical control team taken during one of the regular site meetings, both for the cathedral and Surpirkic, which is coming next. Do you see the new slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. According to its inscriptions, Church of Surpirkic, built in 1035 to house a piece of the true cross by Abu Garib Pahlavani, is one of the most vulnerable yet astonishing structures in Ani, maybe on earth. It is located at the southeast corner of Ani, inside the Simbat walls, nearly 300 meters east of the cathedral. Planned as a rotunda, an octofoil inside, 19-sided polygonal facade furnished with blind arches outside, is a single entrance at the south. A relatively large space on the ground floor level, yet smaller on the second level, which is marked by a small circular balcony accessible from the lower level roof only. Elevated with drum walls, the domed interior is covered with a conical roof on the exterior. Interior surfaces of the church is fully plastered and painted, probably in the 13th century. A jamadun was added in 1193 when for the accommodation of the pilgrims, and a bell tower was erected in 1271 before the main entrance. An earthquake damage to the church is first recorded in 1131. Its dome was restored in 1342, probably due to the damage of the disastrous earthquake of 1319. When Nikolai Marr and his team working at Ani, the church was still standing, but was in a very unstable condition. Marr's efforts to stabilize the walls of the church in 1912 to prevent a total collapse could not save the eastern half of the church, which fell down completely in 1957. A continuous detachment line crack on the south wall, visible in old photographs, is the boundary of this collapse. Marr's stabilization, done with smaller size masonry in dark color than the originals, can be easily seen today, both from the old photographs and remaining on the existing west wall today. The technique employed in the walling up for stabilization turned out not so successful, both due to the weak joints, an outcome of flat mesh cut stones, and a weak cement mortar with a lot of cavities. Pirkic lost its architectural and structural integrity together with this collapse. The remaining western half survived up to date with the scars of the 1988 earthquake, but in a much compromised state. After 1996, Ani was listed in World Monuments Fund's watch list during a mission initiated by the Historical Heritage Protection Foundation in 1998. The main door was filled with rubble stone to prevent any further collapses, besides strengthening the weakened sections of the west wall. In 2008, the church was scientifically documented the first time, and a historic preservation project was prepared that I showed earlier. After World Monuments Fund signed a memorandum of understanding with the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism for the preservation of Pirkic in 2010, conservation works began in 2012 with the support of US Ambassador's Fund for Cultural Preservation. As expected, the conservation works for Pirkic consist of 3 planned phases, yet it comes with a different management plan. more collaborative, very detailed, questioning all options, flexible and independent of tendering restrictions of Turkey, heavily supervised, informed with advanced technologies, led and supported by the members of the technical control team, composed of both consultants by World Monuments Fund and experts, preservation architects and engineers from the ministry. And more support comes from my colleagues, one from Istanbul, Alim Pontioğlu, a preservation architect, and the other from Moscow, Armen Kazaryan, an architect and a well-known architecture historian specialized in medieval Armenian architecture. Both are here with us today, which I call this as the Turkish team. The first phase is, after fencing the site for the safety of the visitors, erection of a protective and load-bearing scaffolding inside the monument for the security of the site team has been provisioned. Starting the excavation and cataloging after the relocation of the fallen fragments of the east part of the church in a secure area and completing the emergency stabilization works have been planned in the second phase. The site and the fragments will then be surveyed and modeled for a virtual anastylosis study for the next phases of the works. The third phase is, after evaluation of the data obtained by the structural monitoring program, construction material analysis, wall paint analysis, and studies on the fragments, final structural stabilization works have been planned to be completed in the third phase. You will see the program of works. I tried to shorten them, but it's kind of a movie at the end. The program started as soon as we had the written approval from the protection board in Kars. A structural health monitoring system was installed before the works. It included a sound alert for the safety of the workers to warn them to evacuate in case of any seismic activities during the clearing inside the church. A fence was designed on precast footings to limit the site for visitors, and installed signboards to inform the visitors both of the story of the church and the ongoing works. Following this, the workers started to move fallen fragments of the eastern section of the church with the help of a crane and clear the rubble to expose the existing floor level before erecting a steel scaffolding inside the church. The large fragments ranging from 4 to 12 tons, each were carefully lifted, documented, and relocated around the church on wooden blocks for further documentation. Works for clearing the fallen section of the church continued, and the progress was documented on a daily basis. And it continued until the original stone floor tiles were exposed and documented before the erection of prefabricated steel scaffold. Designed and manufactured in Ankara, the scaffolding was assembled on precast footings, and the excavation works started in collaboration with Kars Museum. Relocation and cataloging continued. Numerous small fragments were also collected and classified, such as parts of inscriptions, kachkars, pottery, glass, alien masonry. By the end of the work season, end of August, over 650 architectural large fragments were relocated and catalogued. For facilitating the 3D laser scanning, these large fragments were then relocated, aligned at an interval of 1 meter distance from each other. The church and the fragments were documented again with a laser scanning survey to prepare virtual models of them for further investigations. In September 2012, the technical control team includes the consultants of the World Monuments Fund and the experts from the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, A series of project meetings were held at the site to discuss the works realized to date, the findings after clearing and excavations, winterization strategies for the monuments and the fragments, since the work season in Kars is limited and winter was advancing. Besides, discussed plans for the near future. And it was agreed to wait before starting the emergency stabilization works, such as stitching the main crack, repair of loose stones, repairs on the west wall of the church, until the results of the structural health monitoring program are complete. Yet, the following protective measures to be realized before winter. Temporary shelters to protect the fragments against the effects of harsh winter conditions were manufactured at the site. They were planned away from the future excavation zones. To clear the loose mortar and vegetation and to start works over the dome to strengthen the loose masonry and the works, a foot scaffolding manufactured in wood was erected over the lower level roof. Cleaning of the mortar, of the loose mortar, soil and vegetation on the roofs, and filling the voids with a hydraulic lime mortar mix was carried out with the utmost care and safety measures. A durable geotextile membrane was laid over the large crack on the dome before applying the mortar to stop the effects of snow and rain. As all exposed walls, architectural fragments, and exposed floors, including excavated areas, were covered with geotextile membranes. Small fragments were carried close to the west wall inside and placed on shelves. That was the end of work season 2021. In the beginning of 2013, sorry, I missed all the dates here. Anyway, this is after the first season. TCT meetings were held both in Ankara and at the site again for an evaluation and future planning. And agreed to start the emergency stabilization works at the two critical zones, the west wall and the south wall over the main entrance gate. In a few days after this meeting, our night guard reported some of the upper level facings of the west wall fell down. With email and Skype communications, we have agreed on the details of the interventions, include temporary shoring for the west section. A temporary heavy timber structure sourced from Sarıkamış was designed to shore the south wall over the entrance gate of the church, which tends to lean towards east and in danger of falling down. Although we had temporary shoring for the west wall following the partial collapse, where a series of problems coexisted, agreement on the details of the stabilization works with the Turkish team over email communications took some time. It was finally agreed to shore the interior wall of the staircase up to the pending stones and complete west wall facings together with lime injections besides other measures. Interior wall completion together with new stainless steel steps modeled after reconstruction drawings of the original steps and stainless steel banding to strengthen the two attached sections of the west wall. Besides, other temporary measures were completed by the end of the summer of 2013. Construction materials analysis and wall paint studies were realized into separate missions by the experts from the Middle East Technical University in Ankara and from the Central Laboratory of the Ministry in Istanbul. The paint analysis displayed there were more than one paint layer. An archival research by Arman Kazaryan brought about the extent and findings of the research done during the Mars campaign. and virtual anastomosis studies by Alin Ponteoğlu to see if we can integrate some of the fallen fragments back to the church walls. In 2015, technical control team was at the site again to further discuss and plan for the third phase of works, which is completion of the stabilization program, on-site tests for the preservation of the wall paints, and for enlarging excavations and presentation of the site for visitors. After review of the structural health monitoring and further analysis, final proposals by the consultants, Steve Kelly and Predrag Gavrilovich, and structural engineers led by Ahmet Türer from Middle East Technical University in Ankara, agreed to continue with the extension of the scaffolding up to the dome against any failures and to insert tension rings both around the cupola and the lower level. And these were realized at the end of 2015. Next planning now was the completion of the west wall, a part of the stabilization, and in the original 11th century size masonry. We started to search the quarries around Ani to find the appropriate stone for the walls. Some of the quarries were historic quarries. For instance, nearby Tignis, you see on the left-hand side, themselves became objects of preservation. Although we found one away from the historical quarries, we faced a lot of difficulties in sourcing them. Meanwhile, our man Kazaryan had advised someone from Yerevan for the west wall completion. Arayik Avetyan, an architect and a very qualified mason, sculptor, over communications came to Ani, inspected the quarries and the facing stones at Perkic, seen all the difficulties with the quarries here, and advised to source stone from the operating mines in Armenia, which was much easier. In 2016, I went to Yerevan together with Alin, inspected the samples and their specifications, and with the agreement of the technical control team and the World Monuments Fund, we decided to source them from Armenia. As we had the minute detail of each facing stone, we have prepared the drawings of the new facings, ordered, and they were cut in desired dimensions. And they were all pre-shaped by Arayik nearby Yerevan under the supervision of Luca and her friend. And they were transported to Ani via Georgia at the end of 2016. In the summer of 2017, the site team composed of a site engineer from Ankara, who also did all the steel works at Perkic you've seen before, Ömer Bey, some other qualified workers from Ocaklı village, and Arayik Avetyan started to lift pre-shaped blocks to complete the west wall stabilization. The teamwork turned impressive. While Arayik started to learn some Turkish words for communications, Ömer Bey and the team from Ocaklı also started to understand Armenian words in the following days. A detail showing how new blocks were pinned to the steel bands and lime mortar is applied. While myself and Alin were not at the site all the time, we communicated via WhatsApp for critical decisions to be made, such as we had to take off a small portion of the loose facings done in 1912 stabilization and replace them with the new ones that Steve Kelly called this operation as demarring. Works also included integrating classified fallen fragments back to the wall, such as a keystone of an arch and pieces of colonnades, and the foundation inscription, and the 11th century wall together with 21st century one. Final stabilization program include also a permanent buttress, again with the 11th century features, to replace the temporary wooden scaffolding holding the south section now, besides other measures. Detailed and ordered again from Armenia, the blocks already arrived at the site and work started last year. The new buttress wall will also integrate parts of the fragments collected and classified earlier. Okay, here's the of the site team doing this very hard work done in a constricted area inside the church. Okay, that was a long one. And here's a representation of Ani, conceived and recently painted in 2019 by a local artist from Ocaklı, showing Ani is going back to life again. It is my thought that after the masonry work started at Pirkech, villagers also started to pay regular visits to the site, observed and talk among themselves about the masterly work being realized. I believe they began to realize how, and with so many master labor and artistic talent, these great monuments were being constructed at Ani. Arayik Usta, meaning Master Arayik, became and remains a legend in Ocaklı. Now, the last part of my presentation is about research, further research, collaborations, and friendships. So, how did we get to here? A team of Turkish and Armenian experts and workers collaborating in preserving and stabilizing a monument in Ani, establishing relationships, understanding each other, and developing friendships. Now I will be taking you back from here to 2011, when Koç University, RCAC, and Anadolu Kültür of Deir Osman Kavala organized a workshop on Ani with the participation of scholars and experts in the field of preservation, followed by a field trip to Ani. It was completely a new, refreshing experience for me to exchange ideas on the preservation approaches to medieval monuments on both sides of the border. This has been the beginning of a long-lasting relationship with the participants of this workshop. In 2013, Scott Redford, director of RCAC, called to inform me about Karsten Paludan Müller, director of Norwegian Institute for Cultural Heritage Research, NICU, likes to fund a project in Ani. As there were some ongoing projects and works already at the site, we thought of exploring what was around Ani in the medieval context. So we started planning for a new research called Ani in Context, together with the support and organization of NICU, WMF, and Anadolu Kültür, and with the participation of scholars and experts. Armen Kazaryan prepared a map of the sites to be visited, as some of them were not located on the modern maps. Myself and our architects working at Pirkech at the time explored these sites and routes using Armen's map before all the participants arrived at Ani. The last day of the visits, we had a wrap-up meeting in Kars. Osman Bey also attended to sum up the ideas of the participants for a publication. This was the first collaborative project and research centered both in Ani and its wider context with the experts over the globe. turned into a publication with the methodology developed at the workshop, it became a pioneer work for other site assessment visits in Turkey. This time, this work taken a step forward by the vision and initiation of Dir Osman Bey. In 2014, this time, Mush, Daron, was the first site after Ani in context to visit, inspect the current state and the fate of the Armenian monuments, together with the experts in the field of preservation, to document and prepare reports to raise awareness for their protection. But this was a very painful experience for all of us to see how we have treated the great monuments, especially to see purposefully destroyed Surp Garabet Monastery to build up a village with its stones. 2014 was also the beginning of our association, KMKD, again an initiation of Dir Osman Bey, with the same aim to continue these site assessment visits in different parts of Turkey. We started to frame our work as documenting, presenting, protecting the heritage at risk. You may visit our website at kmkd.org to explore both the publications of this hard work since 2014 and other projects and the ones in progress. Other collaboration, this time at Grand Cathedral, which was inspected, documented with a 3D laser scanning survey with the participation of an international team of experts, co-organized by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, Anadolu Kültür and World Monuments Fund, and supported by US Ambassadors Fund in 2015. Listed as a WMF watch site, Grand Cathedral is now waiting for funds for emergency measures to be taken for the unstable walls, dome, door lintels, and so, as it is in the immediate danger of collapse. Again, an initiation of Dir Osman Bey with the support of the World Monuments Fund. This has been the first official invitation by the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism, though not in a direct diplomacy, to start a collaborative work of Armenian and Turkish experts on the protection of Ani and its monuments. In 2016, just after Ani became a UNESCO site, the idea for an Ani exhibition emerged, not only to promote Ani as a great site with its history, art and architecture, but also with the historic preservation efforts since 2006. Next was a workshop started in Kars with the participation of experts and Dir Osman Bey, and supported by Dir Karsten from NIKU. The exhibition was shaped further during the workshop in Istanbul. Osman Bey contributed and invested in every single panel of the exhibition throughout. As it was planned to be opened first at Depot in Istanbul and will travel later to other venues around the world, Poetry of Stones, Ani, an architectural treasure on cultural crossroads exhibition opened, but in the absence of Dir Osman Bey in Istanbul. Later in the year, then in Oslo, and in Ankara, with some other side events, and finally in Kars. Poetry of Stones is not only an extraordinary exhibition shaped by the wisdom, devotion, and hard work of Osman Kavala, but a collaborative work, a creation of experts from Armenia, Russia, Turkey, and the third countries. Demonstrates best what Dear Osman Kavala stands for is from my acceptance speech at the European Archaeological Heritage Prize awarded to Dear Osman Bey in 2019 for his promoting the social values of our shared heritage and his contributions and vision in the field of cultural heritage. While taken hostage and still kept in slavery, Osman Bey initiated another project, Ani app. This is again a collaborative project of experts to digitally introduce Ani for the visitors to be used while they walk around by their phones and iPads. Will include historical background, substantial information of all the monuments, epigraphy, art and architecture, wall paints, decorations, sculptures, and so, is now on the way with the great support by dear Veronica Callas, who is currently writing, interpreting, and editing the material to be published by the end of this year. A final one. With all the best from dear Osman Bey. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Yavuz. It's just, it's very emotional to the notes that you ended on. Yes, it's really important that we remember the initiative that's been taken by Osman Bey to start these really important projects. Would you be able to? There we go. I can end this. So yes, thank you. We have some time now, about 20 minutes for questions and for comments. So please do, participants, if you'd like to comment, then you can use the raise hand function, or you can post a Q into the chat, or you can write your questions in the chat, and I can pass them on to Yavuz. Also, if you're watching on Facebook, I have it open as well, so I should be able to see your comments there. But if I could start, I think maybe the most emotive part of your presentation, which of course shows the incredible technological and technical expertise that's being brought into this crucial site. Finally, it's somewhat painful to know that only in 1957, Surgamana Pukic lost its intact shape. But maybe the stories that you ended on is the most emotive part. The way in which this conservation work brought together scholars from different backgrounds, and particularly the coming of stone from Armenia. And it's not so much a question as an invitation to tell us a bit more about this story, about the search for these quarries, because friends who are joining might not know that conservation efforts, it's very often in conservation efforts when they're done so scientifically and brilliantly as this, that you actually find out so much more about the site in the process of research. You can find out what sort of stones being used, where it came from, and that of course tells you so much about the site's own history. So I just wondered if you could tell us a bit more about this story of searching for the stones of Ani, and how it was found in Armenia, and the way in which the master builder earned his reputation in Ocakli today.
Yeah, it's a actually. This was part of a stabilization program. Actually, of course, there are stones around Ani. There are quarries, and not quarries because they are not operating. The ones which were operating, were from the Middle Ages, and not a recent one. Neither around Ani or along the Arpachai, but you see quarries on the other side of the border in Armenia. All operating alongside Arpachai, and the stones. The quarries. There are different ones. The one used during Ashot time is kind of, reddish. I mean, you see them in Manucher Mosque. I visited that quarry as well, and it's about to, finished up. Actually, I mean, maybe that's why. I mean, they after a while they decided not to employ that stone. So I mean, all actually are in chances. I mean, they came like during the course of time. I met Arman in 2011, and then we kind of started to exchange. Especially after 2013 with the Ani context, and later, I mean, he started to be one of the consultants of the project at Turkish. And so, I mean, and also we became friends. I mean, we had all different things like with all the participants actually from that workshop, like Christina, Rachel Goshkaryan, and others. I mean, we came across all the way. So I mean, it was a chance. I mean, our man, proposed this mason. There are a lot of mason, of course. I mean, in Armenia, sculpture. In Turkey, we don't have, that kind of mason. I mean, who shape, large blocks, for instance. I mean, we search for that. So, I mean, this relation started in 2016, and it still continues. I mean, he is waiting to come as soon as the border is open and resume the work where he left actually. So I don't know if this is.
Yes, that's great. And
then like to hear, yeah.
So that you're getting lots of thanks in the chat, so I hope you can read those. And I'll just ask Veronica to unmute as her hand is up.
Hello, Yavuz.
Hello.
Merhaba.
Merhaba.
Atinadan. How are you? This was excellent. I wanted to show my face because you mentioned me so much in your paper. So I appreciate that. I'm Veronica. I appreciate your using some of the photographs I took those years back, 2006. Yeah. As well. Very nice. Very, very excellent paper. Excellent work. Such a devotion and such detail, and just amazing. Overwhelming. Really overwhelming. And I've seen you've shared those files with me. Just really very impressive. Just a question. I think I asked you, in private before in the past. Have you done the studies about the results of the interventions from 2006, 7, 8 of Tigran and the mosque? I mean, 10 years have gone by. Have you studied either the positive or negative effects of those interventions that you did then? And have you been able to use any of that data for future reference to what you plan on doing with the rest of the monuments? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, after 2008, I mean, after they were completed, I visited both of them, several times. At Tigran, I mean, although we designed security doors, for instance, I mean, they are not in use, and I seen, more damages coming to the wall paints. Although the roofs are okay, but I mean, there should be some, extra wall paint studies and protection. The security is still problematic at the site, and that's mainly because I mean the Ani and cars. I mean, the season is quite limited, like 3-4 months, and excavation team works only for that period. I mean, they used to do that in the past. Now it's changing. There will be a permanent excavation team because they have a excavation house since 2000. How do you say where we are? 2019. Yeah. So they have the depot of the what they have been collecting from the site also. So they will be there, afterwards, and I hope, I mean, there will be more security, not only at Tigran or other, monuments, but also, there are some, how do you say, excavations, without, permission, which is called raid, I think. I mean, there are raids going on in some parts. But the shelters are functioning. I mean, we don't see any problems with those. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question satisfactorily.
Veronica, does that answer? I can ask you to unmute.
Yeah, that was my question, if they're functioning, the shelters, and if they've been successful in saving the masonry walls, the paintings, and so on. I mean, how successful have those interventions been, and can you learn from them for future, for future reference to your, future projects? Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect. We've still got more time for questions, so please do keep asking them. One thing I was struck by was the painting, which connects to Hekenar's paper last week, this new representation of Ani, which was done by an inhabitant of a Jakla village. So has the experience there really been that you said they've seeing Ani come to life? Is there more of a connection, do you think, between the people of not just Ojakli, I guess, but the broader Kars region from this project? They're connecting more with this heritage as part of their own regional history as well?
I don't know. I mean, that's a very interesting question. I mean, I just put that image because it's very impressive, I think. Coming from a talented villager, just imagining the Gagikashan, for instance, in its original form, or the cathedral with a dome.
Yeah, I was really struck by the Gagikashan because that means they must have gone and researched what it would have looked like and looked into how they could imagine the Gagikashan in order to reimagine it fully up like that.
Yeah, I mean, there are, of course, I mean, people are visiting and they are seeing things. I mean, photographs, all these things, and the media. I mean, they are using media, so they are on Facebook everywhere. I mean, so but nice thing about that painting, it just not showing the buildings, but also has put people a village life, the birds and things like that. So that's kind of optimistic look at the site from their window, I think, and I reconnected this with what they have being seeing at Turkish. I mean, they saw the first time. How these great buildings were built actually in the medieval times. So probably that kind of started them to rethink about the site because it's also their how do you say a green area for their cows. So they see it as part of their life as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Are there any further questions from the Facebook as well? If not, then maybe a last question is where next? Where do we go from here? Both in terms of the situation. I mean, it's the fact that this series has to be dedicated to Osman Bey, and that he's congratulating us on getting it together from prison, speaks to the current situation. But it seems like there's still a lot of support for the ongoing restoration work from the Ministry of Culture. So what are the next plans, and how do you see the preservation work going from here?
Actually, ministry hasn't started any other, projects since 2014. The last one was the conservation project of the North Walls. And there's another active project, which is the stabilization of the bridge, actually, the medieval bridge down on Arpaçay. The half part is on the Turkish side, the other half is on the Armenian side. But only this part, I mean, the part on the Turkish side is going to be stabilized. I mean, there are plans for that. But that's a big issue, actually. Except World Monuments Fund and NICO, I mean, up to now, there aren't many, other funds, interested neither in Ani or in Meran. So, I mean, funds are a priority because, I mean, there are very, vulnerable monuments like Archaeology. The Gavit of Archaeology is in a very bad state since, Marr's time even. I mean, it's still pending, on the air. And there are others in the castle and the Ashgabat, and also Virgin's Monastery down is not in good condition. I mean, there's no progress there, and that's a great architecture and lots of good things about that site as well. Although it's not that accessible, it's crumbling down. I mean, maybe last year or the year before, when we visited Virgin's Monastery, one of the retaining walls had fallen down recently, actually. And it was raided. So I don't know. I mean, the situation in Turkey is not that great, especially I mean the economic situation and the pandemic situation added up. So I don't know. I mean, how it will be developed. I mean, there should be something to be hopeful in the future.
Absolutely, and I think that message is a very appropriate place for us to close the series. So firstly, just before I say what I'm going to say, thank you so much, Yavuz, for this really, really wonderful talk, and for all the work that you and Kem Gede and Anadolu Kultur, and of course Osman Bey and your collaborators, many of whom are here this evening, have been doing. It's really crucial, and it's brought us in the last 15 years a long way from where we were in 2006. Yeah. So thank you so much. But it doesn't stop here, and we need to make our own reasons to be hopeful. So as we said at the beginning, and so we said throughout this series, this isn't just meant to be a series of events, but a way of gathering a bit of momentum, of re-energizing ourselves, of reintroducing ourselves to this crucial world historical site. We aim it to be a long-term collaboration between us at the Armenian Institute and our friends Yavuz and others at KMKD in Turkey. And we'd like to found an international research network which eventually can provide the basis for a platform, for a sort of Friends of Ani platform at some point to promote awareness, research and preservation of this crucial site. So if that sounds exciting to you, and if that sounds like a reason to be hopeful, as Yavuz says, then please do get in touch with me at nick@armenianinstitute.org.uk. And we're going to be making plans going forwards so that this can continue to be a site that brings together the peoples of the region in dialogue and reconciliation, and as we've seen tonight, in friendship. So thank you everyone for coming. You'll be able to watch this talk from this evening, as well as all of the others, on the Armenian Institute's YouTube page, and 3 out of the last 4, unfortunately we couldn't live stream Hegnar's last week, but on our Facebook. If you enjoyed or if you have suggestions for how we can improve the series as well as the event tonight, please do leave your feedback in the form that's been left in the chat. And if you are able to, then please do consider supporting us here at the Armenian Institute. We're a small charity, community-based, but we rely on the generosity of our friends and benefactors to keep doing what we're doing. But thank you again, Yavuz. Thank you to everyone at Kemikade, and thank you all of you for coming. And we hope to see you again next time. Bariyereko, Shamlar, wherever you are, and see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.